Hey there, good morning everyone. Friday the 30th of September 2022. This morning's devotional is a reading from the book of Isaiah chapter 28 verse 23, which reads, "Listen and hear my voice. Pay attention and hear what I say." Have you ever had the experience of being somewhere away from all the noise and the hustle and bustle of town and city life? Perhaps somewhere in the mountains, which is my favorite place by the way, or in the desert, and as you sat there or even lay there looking up at the starry sky, you were amazed at the silence. It was quiet, right? Wrong. It wasn't quiet. It was just that you couldn't hear the sounds. For some, the absence of noise can be quite intimidating, but it is great that lack of noise. Try it sometime. The atmosphere around us is filled with thousands of voices, but you are just not tuned into them. You can't pick them up. For example, if someone asks you, what kind of device are you listening to? You might say to them, well, it's a radio, or I'm listening online. There are voices, sound waves, and digital signals all around us. The question is, have you heard the voice of God? Immediately you might think, what kind of nut would claim to hear God's voice? And here I'm thinking of a man in a psychiatric hospital who claimed to be Napoleon Bonaparte. And the psychiatrist asked him, well, who told you that you're Napoleon? God did, the man replied. And immediately the booming voice came across the room that says, I did not. But have we really heard the voice of God? When I ask you if you've heard God's voice, I don't mean something weird, but I mean to ask you is if you've ever heard God's inaudible voice within your heart saying, I want you to do something. If you answer never, then ask yourself, is it possible that He's been trying to tell you something and I've just not been listening, or I'm not tuned in to His frequency? In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 26, we find the reminder, His voice shook the earth. And then again, in another biblical account, in 1 Kings chapter 19, which tells of Elijah's encounter with depression and encounter with God, it says that when God spoke, it was a quiet, still voice. So the question might be asked, how do you recognize the voice of God as opposed to the voice of Satan or something else such as our own selfish desire? Well, part of the answer comes from the New Testament. In Hebrews chapter 1, verse 2, God, in His last days, has spoken to us by His Son. We also see the words of Jesus recorded in the book of Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, where Jesus says, Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him, and he with me. It is through His word, that is the Bible, that we most often hear His voice today. Sometimes others will tell us about His word, but sometimes as we read it ourselves, we will hear it. I'm not going to tell you that God cannot speak directly to you or to your heart, convincing you that you must do His will. But I can tell you quite clearly that He will never ever speak a word that contradicts His word in the Bible. My dear friends, do you want to hear His voice more clearly? Take time to read His letters to you. Take time to meditate on what you have learned and listen to His voice in prayer. The voice of God is saying, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. And only a fool would deafen his ears to that kind of voice. May the Lord be with you. May He bless you. May He cause His face to shine upon you and be with you always. Goodbye.